Freedom in the greater community. Freedom is rare in the greater community. Individual freedom and the existence of free societies which value the potential and the creativity of the individual, particularly as it pertains to the welfare of a nation and a world. You might wonder why this is so, thinking that the development of freedom really represents the goal of evolution in a higher sense. But freedom is rare, freedom in any society, even in a primitive society. It is rare because of the difficulties of living in the physical environment, the challenges of survival, the acquisition of resources, competition with others, the threat of war and annihilation, the problems of governance, the size of civilizations and the rise of technology. All these things, to whatever extent that they exist in any world or in any group, tend to have a limiting factor on the value and the recognition of the importance of individual freedom. Groups must work together to survive. And surviving in the greater community, even as a technologically advanced race, is not an easy proposition. If you become dependent upon other nations for the very resources you need to live and to function, then your existence is always jeopardized by any interruption in trade and commerce or the threat of exclusion that can be placed upon you by other nations. To lose your self-sufficiency is to move into a position of greater insecurity. People in the world today associate advancing technology with advancing security, and often for very good reasons, for many people in the world today have an assured supply of food and can gain access to resources that only the nobility in times past could acquire. A great deal of wealth and a great deal of stability have been created amongst nations that have this kind of affluence. But should the resources that support this affluence begin to decline, as is happening in the world today, then you can see how easily your wealth, your security and your stability can begin to diminish as well. Freedom is not a right in the universe. It is a privilege and a luxury. Your values may argue with this, but your expectations eventually must conform to the real circumstances of life. Individual freedom is extremely valuable, but it is not guaranteed, and you cannot claim it as a right. You will be shocked to find, as you begin to learn about and even experience the greater community in which you live, how rare freedom really is. Freedom itself is always relative. You never have complete freedom of movement and expression. In concert with others, you cannot do whatever you want or say whatever you want, and you understand this. You will never have this freedom if you are living in association with others and if you are functioning to survive as a group, as a nation and as a people. Therefore, freedom is always relative to your circumstances, to your affluence and to the degree of stability and security you have been able to establish and to maintain over time. Freedom for the individual becomes a problem in terms of stability. Nations that are more democratic tend to be internally more dynamic and more creative, but in a sense more unstable as well. If individuals have the freedom to express themselves, they also have the freedom to exert social power and to change the structure of their society. This is beneficial if the society has an adequate provision of resources and can sustain this provision over time. But as humanity will soon discover, as these provisions begin to diminish, the circumstances and the allowance of freedom will diminish as well. Nations that are under great pressure to provide essential resources generally do not allow a great deal of expression of personal freedom. They cannot afford it. They cannot afford the social disorder this creates. They cannot afford dissension. They cannot afford to have their people opposing one another, internal strife and discord, factions working against each other and special interest groups overriding the needs, the rights and the concerns of the general population. This all creates instability. That is why the freedom that must be emphasized is a greater internal freedom, the freedom to find a way to knowledge, the deeper intelligence that God has placed within you and within all sentient life. For your circumstances may require great limitations in what you are able to say, to do and to express in your society. Even in the world as it undergoes the great waves of change, this will be the case. The larger a society becomes, the more restraint there will be upon personal freedom. The more a society must stabilize itself for its own survival, the more restraint there will be on personal freedom. In a world such as yours, with an ever-growing population and a shrinking well of resources, you can begin to see how personal freedom will be limited in the future, circumstantially limited, limited by necessity. You will not have the wealth or the social power to do the things perhaps you could do before if you were living in an affluent nation. People do not make this association. They do not see that plundering their world's resources is actually creating the very set of circumstances that will rob them of their personal freedoms and advantages. Nations that have achieved a more mature, stable state also have limits on freedom. But in free societies, the power of creativity for the individual is still highly regarded. Yet the freedom for people to be reckless, destructive and chaotic is most definitely suppressed. The stability and security of the nation now become essential, even in a free society. So while you may have the freedom to express yourself and to contribute your unique gifts for the welfare and the benefit of everyone, you do not have the freedom to be reckless, destructive or chaotic. Perhaps you will view this with anxiety, but you must see the necessity of this. As humanity begins to face the fact that it has grown beyond the limits of its resources, you will see the power of the needs of civilization itself, the needs of the human family, to prevail over the rights and privileges of its citizens out of sheer necessity, and that the expression of human freedom must become founded on a deeper foundation of knowledge within yourself. Humanity is a great benefit here and a great opportunity to maintain the value of individual freedom and creativity in order to generate the necessary advancement in all aspects of your life. But, circumstantially, you will lose many privileges in the future. At this moment, you can use your personal conveyance to go wherever you want, in most places. In the future, you will not have a personal conveyance. You simply will not be able to have this kind of flexibility, not because someone is oppressing you, but because the resources do not provide for it. The circumstances do not provide for it. You have created this condition. You and everyone else created this condition, this limitation. Because human civilization will be under great stress and great peril, extreme measures will be taken to limit internal conflict and dissension. In many cases, this will be unfortunate. In many cases, this will be anti-progressive. In many cases, this will be detrimental. But you cannot have disunity in the face of adversity, and great adversity you will be facing. Advanced nations and the greater community face adversity as well. In most cases, they have outstripped their world's natural resources. They have developed technology that depends upon foreign trade and foreign manufacture. They have lost the freedom to sustain themselves, to be self-sufficient. Now they must meet the terms and agreements placed upon them to gain access to the resources they need from abroad. Now they must engage in the complex and taxing endeavor of negotiations, persuasion and power in the mental environment. You can see here where power and affluence lead to the loss of personal freedom. It begins to work in the other direction. Most nations that have become technologically based have lost their essential freedom and integrity because they have overwhelmed their home world's ability to provide for them. They also have been seduced to acquire technologies that they themselves could not produce, using resources that they themselves could not produce. As a result, they have become dependent upon foreign powers and forced into engagement in the complexity of trade in the greater community, subject now to councils and agreements established with other nations, subject now to the rules of engagement imposed upon them by others. If a world becomes overpopulated and outstrips its resources, it will either fail and decline or come under the persuasion of foreign powers. This is the inevitability of following a path of this nature. In your world, amongst the wealthy, freedom is regarded as a right and is taken for granted. But you do not see that it is all based upon the acquisition of resources, upon the wealth of resources, upon the wealth of your world. The fact that you simply cannot go out into the universe and gain everything that you have depleted here on Earth is a reality of life that has not yet been recognized. If this were recognized, it may change human behavior and human expectations very significantly. And that is the power and potency of the teachings that are being presented here.